What's up, everybody? Welcome back this week to the Coach Ben podcast on Jiu-Jitsu Mag Podcast Network. I'm here with my co-host, Jim, owner of Jiu-Jitsu Mag. Jim, please introduce our very special guest this week.
Good morning, Ben. Well, before I do introduce, I would like to give a little context on what we're about to talk about and how this thought came into the head. So a couple weeks ago, Ben and I, we were discussing the merits and demerits of ego. So as we were talking about this, a light bulb moment. And I thought, I would love to hear what our next guest has to say about it. And our next guest is the one and only Ryron Gracie. Mr. Gracie, good morning.
Good morning.
So
Ryron, real quick, tell everybody what happened here. You're wearing, Jim thought you were wearing a scarf, but it's really just a sling. So it's just an injury from jiu-jitsu?
No, I fell on my bike and silly fall and I hit my shoulder on the ground. So now it's a little bit sore and swollen. And I was told to wait to get an x-ray today. So I have an x-ray planned for 4 hours from now. And then we'll see what's happening. So I have full range of motion in my arm, but there is one direction that it gets very painful, not a little, it's pretty painful. So just to see what's happening, I'm gonna do an x-ray and we'll go from there.
So yeah, I hope that's all right.
So with that, ages ago in a different lifetime, I had a skiing accident to where I caught an edge, I started flying forward, but in the middle of that moment of falling, I thought, roll. And I
rolled.
You rolled, okay? And it was instinctually, you didn't have to think about it, right? And moral of that story, I ended up suffering an AC separation on my shoulder, but it could have been much worse, I feel, without that instinctual roll maneuver. And
yes,
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Cool. So we brought, we're bringing Ryron on specifically for the topic of ego. Me and Jim actually recorded a podcast, but we were just really tired that day, and we may have talked a bunch of gibberish. So I really like the fact that Ryron is on, because there are certain things that I remember very, very clearly about Ryron's career that embodies that no ego. Let me just hopefully these are not things that happened way too long ago, because they seem to have happened like last year to me. Ryron, I remember you faced Josh Barnett at Metamoris, and you also faced Andre Galvao in his prime at Metamoris. And, that to me is huge. A lot of big name competitors nowadays, they tend to avoid the big challenges. And, that's just a side note I wanted to bring up, and something I really respect you for, because, I'm going to be honest, I would not face Josh Barnett on, 2 days notice or something like that. So, yeah.
It was my ego.
So speaking on that, was it ever a thought, because you have a lot of what some would consider a burden with that name of Gracie inside of any kind of jiu-jitsu competition event, or everywhere you go, you inherently represent jiu-jitsu. So some people, they allow their ego to get the better of them, and they would never put themselves out there that way. They would just maintain their position in the community. However, you did not. And why would you do something like that?
Well, so the ego is unavoidable, right? And I feel like even me saying I'll go against Josh Barnett with 2 days notice, after it's even easier after knowing that 10 other heavyweight jiu-jitsu black belts all around the community said no. So it was like a no-brainer to say yes. And it was very, very ego driven, but in the way of, this is an opportunity. So this is an opportunity for me to experience something that I don't usually get to experience. Now, could I potentially go roll with Josh Barnett? Could I have went last week and roll with him at his school and set something up? Potentially, I could have said, hey, I'm Ryron, I want to train with you. And he would have most likely invited me. But in that case, in that moment, there was nothing except for an opportunity to show myself and to show my grandfather and my father and anybody else that understands jiu-jitsu the way that I do, which is we're ready to go. There is not necessarily a training camp. There's not necessarily, it has to be the right weight or the right time or the right day. It's just, I train jiu-jitsu for a living. It's all I do is jiu-jitsu. And there's an opportunity here. And this event lost the other, I don't know who the other fighter was supposed to be. Was it Bushesha?
It might have been, yeah. I think it might have been. It was a big name. I remember it was a big name. So whoever, it took a big name to fill. So
that person couldn't make it. So let me go make it now. So my brother's event. So it's a lot of ego on the side of, but not in the ego of when I lost. The ego when I lost was not like, I was not devastated by the loss. I was actually very clear on, wow, the mistake that I made. I understand where the mistake came from. It came from me doing a movement that I believe was a little premature. And I was in the energy of trying to escape and to be active. And then as a result of that mindset that I adopted, even for that short amount of time, could be 20 seconds, 10 seconds, it resulted in me getting submitted. So fortunately, when I got submitted, the ego kind of stepped out and the awareness stepped in and said, oh, look at you. You tried to be fancy and do some wild movement and your foot got caught. Instead of my foot getting caught and me immediately placing myself as less special than he is. I simply made a mistake, and people make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, I think that's I think your explanation of that, Ryron, was really good, because I think that is actually the way, because ego is just there. It's not good or bad. It's just there, and it's a double-edged sword. And I think those 10 black belts that refuse to take that challenge, they let, maybe there's other factors, but I can tell you probably a lot of it was the ego. They don't want to face somebody like Josh Barnett. It's a scary dude. He's very high level. They don't want to look bad. And, that's, I think, not a good way to utilize the ego, whereas when you did it, you decided, you had the ego, of course, that you wanted to challenge yourself, to learn the truth. And I think that is how you utilize the ego. And when you let your ego get in the way of the truth, I think that is a problem. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I feel like people who said no, they were allowing the ego to kind of, it was their ego. It was serving their ego.
Right.
Which, for example, let's say they haven't trained no gi for a month. That might have been a reason why. Or they have an MMA fight coming up. There's many reasons why. So everybody's using every opportunity to serve themselves. So fortunately for me, and when I look at my grandfather, when I think of Ryron Gracie, I think of somebody who he embodied that. It is, okay, I'm ready right now. I can go at any moment. There's no training camp. There's no preparation. I'm always ready. I live ready. So you see how the opportunity served my ego, whereas it didn't serve other people's egos. So I don't see them as using the ego in not the ideal way. I see them, they're kind of bowing to the ego in the way that makes sense for them. Because, for example, they might have a jiu-jitsu match or an MMA match scheduled, and it could potentially affect the people's interest in that next fight of theirs that they're maybe getting paid more money for, or that they have a better chance of winning because they've been training more for it. So whereas for me, you look at how the opening of this conversation, you talked about how you admired me for that.
Yes.
So you see how my brand of myself and my brand of what I believe jiu-jitsu is, which is a ready all the time jiu-jitsu, was strengthened by my ego's decision to do something that is potentially seen as kind of scary and risky. So we're all the same. I don't, the 10 people who said no, They're the exact same as me. The difference is that the action that I took helps my brand, and it could potentially had a good chance of hurting their brand, their ego, because your brand is your ego.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I think, can I give you one scenario? Maybe if I was one of the people who was asked to step up to face Josh Barnett, right, Ryron, and I say, and I think and I decline the offer, and in my head I think, oh man, you know, Josh Barnett, he's a big dude, he's bigger than me, and I don't want to look bad in front of my students. You know, I don't want to get embarrassed. Do you think that that may be you know, not a good utilization there of the ego?
I don't want to say it's not good or bad. I fully understand how, of course,
somebody could feel that way.
If you have 200 students and they all see you lose, why would they want to keep learning from you?
Right.
Right? Because you just lost, and you're telling me
more than that, though. You have way more than 200 students.
Way more. And so the thing is this, because what I'm teaching my students is not, the winning and losing is not what matters in jiu-jitsu. That is a small part. That's 10%. The everyday battle that we play jiu-jitsu, when we play to not get tapped and to tap somebody out, it's a very small percentage. And I've been saying that for years and years and years, that the outcome of this 5-minute roll means nothing compared to all of the other benefits that we're gaining from being on this mat and being around each other and training this art. So for me to go roll with Josh Barnett, that's me being true to my word. I've been saying for 8 years, how you guys, let's not be too worried about being the bottom of side control. If you get tapped out, it's okay. It's a lesson, and you have a better understanding now of that position and what's possible from there. So you see how my talk, imagine if I would have said no to Josh Barnett. Now, nobody would have known if I said no, because I was asked in private. I could have just said no, thanks. So, but you see how, once again, it serves my ego, my story of, you guys, I mean, people ask me, you know, what are you doing? What do you mean 48 hours, you know, warning or preparation to fight him? Why would you do that? And I said, well, why not? I want to experience that. And that was, and I want to experience it. And I understand, and I'm okay with the fact that I could get tapped out. So the students now, man, we had so many students on the mat the next morning. Like, I remember, was it a Friday night? Was it a Friday night or was it Saturday night?
No, I think it was Saturday.
Saturday night. So yeah. Monday morning, Monday day, it was like the busiest class we've ever had, because everybody was so inspired. They were like, let's go, let's roll, let's train. They were excited at the idea that who they're learning from embodies this mindset.
A real dude. Is a real dude. And I think that's really important. I try to, you know, I took a lot of lessons from that. And, you know, I try to do that in my academy, which is just, I don't want to walk around like, you know, I'm some kind of deity that can't, you know, can't be beat. And, you know, I think that creates a kind of a toxic environment. I know a lot of jiu-jitsu schools, though, that is how things are done. And, you know, I just thought that if the instructor is willing to, you know, put themselves out there and is not afraid to lose, not afraid to face big challenges, and still, you know, be the person that he is, the students, it really makes the academy, just takes the aggro out of the academy, you know. Listen, and I think that was amazing.
Students, it's the same when an instructor makes a mistake, or when they're teaching a technique, they forget a detail, or they get a little, sometimes that happens where you're uncertain about a detail. You can respond with, no, that's how you do it, but you truly are feeling uncertain inside. And the truth is that people can relate to you being human. And when someone asks me like, hey, this move right here, and I say, man, I don't even use that kind of move, and I haven't used it for the last 10 years. I'm not even really sure what direction the hand goes or which way I should roll from here. When you tell the student that, it gives them permission to not know. When I roll with Josh Barnett with 2 days warning and I lose and it's okay, it gives them permission to get submitted by somebody who might be a lower belt or heavier or higher belt. And then they don't feel so bad about, they've given themselves permission. Because all we care about is that people stay involved in what so many of us love. And it's people are looking for reasons to step away from the mat, to disqualify themselves. Because in all areas of life, but in jiu-jitsu for sure. So we have to just be aware of the things that we do and that we say as instructors, that we can very quickly kind of help push them off the mat, or we can kind of open the doors of the mat and show them just how safe they are. And when I say safe, I mean you're safe to get tapped out. You're safe to ask me a question, because a lot of students don't ask instructors questions because they don't want to challenge their authority. So there's all kinds of safety that has to exist on the mat. And the safety is for your ego, because nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to be embarrassed or shamed or made fun of. So when I say this is a very safe mat, I mean it's safe, not in the sense that someone's not going to heel hook you, you know what I mean, or not tap or not let go when you tap out. But it's safe in many other ways, meaning if you have a question or if you're uncertain about something and you say, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't really know if that doesn't really make sense to me. Me as the instructor, my response is, oh, let me better clarify it to you. And I can see why it doesn't make sense, instead of, wait, don't tell me it doesn't make sense. It's what I showed you. You see that I'm not even responding like that, but when you say it doesn't make sense and I say, okay, come here, I'll show you that it makes sense. Let's roll. This is how it makes sense. You see, there's an energy of like, you attacked me. And that's because the instructor, and this is the core of the ego, the instructor identifies with what they're saying. So when they say the move is like this, and this, these 3 steps, and the student says, I don't quite know about that. Now you're challenging me as an individual.
Right.
Because that move is what I believe. It's my move. I feel an identification with that move. So now if I say the move is this, this, and this, and you say, hey, no, I'm not sure. I say, yeah, maybe. Let's try. Let's see. But what do you think? Because whether or not that move is good doesn't, that move could actually, it works well for me. That's all I can say. It's worked for me. That's why I'm teaching it to you. But I can now see the faults. So whether or not that move is good, or you hate that move or you love that move, I'm separate from that move.
Right. Right. So if you can take criticism and, you know, different variations, and I think I'm starting to learn that over time. You know, I came from a gym that was very competitive, and, you know, it was one way to do it, and you're going to do it this way, and this is it. And then we roll to the death. So this is funny that your gym probably has, I'm going to guess, you know, way more than 200 students, right? You're probably over 1,000 students, you know, worldwide, you're probably over 10,000 students. So the thing is, to me, is if you want to run a business and you want to, you know, advance the sport of jiu-jitsu, make sure everybody trains forever. That's my goal too. I think you're doing the absolute right thing. My question for you is, I came from not really a self-defense, not the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu background, but rather the Gracie Baja, like the sporting Jiu-Jitsu background. You know, all the gyms that I've attended were more about the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, you know, IBJJF, submission only, these types of things. And my question to you is, you know, what do you think about somebody who wants to be a high-level competitor, and maybe they want to be a high-level UFC fighter? I know you corner and train several UFC fighters. Do they have to change this mindset, or can they also use this mindset of, you know, it's okay to you know, be beaten in training? Because my thing is, there are certain doors that you cannot open when you are at the very highest level. I'm talking at the world-class level. Doors being like doubt, you know, things like that. What do you think about that?
So I feel like the highest level, like somebody who's really, really good, who's an MMA fighter, competitor, especially I have more experience lately with MMA fighters than with really high-level jiu-jitsu competitors, even though let's stick
to the MMA.
Yeah. So, but I still feel like even on that other realm, there is the reason why they're the best, and that they're at that high level is because there is a certain understanding that they're going to train with different people all around the world, all around their town, and they're going to encounter other people who are very, very good. And it's a little naive of them to think that they're never going to lose in their training. So I feel like they a little bit have to embody the mindset of, oh, I made a mistake. And especially because remember, they might not get submitted, but they might get taken down, or they might get punched and lit up a little bit on the
They might lose
stand-up.
the training session.
They might lose whatever, some aspect of it, right? Because the submission is not the end all be all. It's just one way of losing. So let's say that they keep losing, you know, all their controls, their side mounts and their mounts. They can never hold anybody down. That can give a feeling of, man, that could bring doubt. But again, to be one of the best, you need to take from those lessons. And when you lose the position 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 times, then what do? You go find yourself. It could be a wrestling coach, practice on more controls. It could be a jiu-jitsu instructor. So I think that it's very important, and that I for sure, I have encountered some MMA fighters that, for example, didn't want to train with me because they didn't know who I was. Very high level, like they've been champion level MMA fighters and #1 contenders. They didn't want to roll with me 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. So they didn't know who I was. And then when we rolled, eventually when they were kind of like, hey, this is Hito, and by other people who were there gave like you should roll with him. It's a good roll for you. When we rolled, the way that they rolled was very, very conservative, and almost like the whole time being on top of guard and never moving and stalling and holding out of fear of us potentially landing in a position where they would be in more danger than they wanted to be. So now that's not—
You're telling me these guys didn't know who you were?
Yeah, I'm talking like 6, 7 years ago.
They probably knew, but
no, I don't. I actually believe that they didn't know. And once we rolled, it was a very paranoid roll. And then I even have told people in the middle of the roll sometimes, like, for example, I can't escape from underneath somebody's guard. They just keep standing up and punching and retreating. And I'm like, okay. So I would say like, hey, roll over. Let me just side control you. and they're like, no.
No, they don't want to do it, huh?
But in my mind, I'm like, oh, first of all, you're fighting in a month. I'm not fighting. I'm just here to play with you guys, you know? Yeah. Because these other guys that are fighting, you know, in a month or two, they want me to play with them. So I just saw you here and they suggested I roll with you. So for you, what do you mean? No. Like I have to like say, lay down, get off me. And then eventually when I say it like 3, 4, 5 times, they will.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
I think you hit like this really important point here on it. And it's that, I think there's this disconnect and there's a misunderstanding between people who are not at the world-class highest level. And I've trained a lot of competitors and mid-level, jiu-jitsu guys and guys in MMA, that they think that they have to be that perfect, guy that they're never going to lose. And they, in order to get to that elite class, that they have to be perfect and they can't show any, chinks in their armor, no holes in their game, no blind spots. And the funny thing is, what I've noticed over time is that those guys never really make it to the world-class level. But the guys that do make it to the world-class level, people like George St. Pierre, I know you either you or your brother have trained Machida, right?
Yeah,
your brother. I've trained with him one time, and this guy was the most, nicest, open-minded guy. And there's no doubt, why this guy's champion and all that stuff, why he's world-class. But then you see guys kind of in the mid-level, that are trying to still make a name for themselves. And a lot of the biggest, ego that I encountered in jiu-jitsu was from, guys that don't really have a name, that maybe I visit an academy and they see I'm wearing a black belt. But then when I go to train with a well-known black belt, there's everybody's different, but a lot of the times those are the guys that are actually the most open-minded, the nicest, and they have the least ego. And that I think people misunderstand that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that they have the least ego. I would say that their ego is not being shown.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yes, they don't see me as a threat versus a mid-level guy sees me and is like, this guy got to make sure I beat him up so he knows what's up. The highest tier guys, they're always, they're looking for help. They're looking for what I can bring, what value I can bring to them. Whereas a lot of again, I'm making a generalization, but a lot of the mid-tier guys, they're using me as a way to prove their value, as opposed to a lot of the highest level guys that I work with. They don't use me to prove their value. They need me to enhance, the value to create a win-win.
Yes.
Yeah. I would just add to that. There's no lack of ego, as you were saying, Hidon, but I guess the better word would be they probably have a better mastery of their ego. Would that be
okay?
A bit more fair?
Yeah, meaning they're saving their ego for something else. Like they have a potentially a bigger fight. They have a real fight for $500,000 coming up, and it's happening in a month and a half. They can't be wasting any ego on somebody who's willing to train with them and teach them and working with them to prepare for this is like a life-changing fight that they have. They could win, they could continue their career. They can lose the contract and be off, the roster of fighters. So you see they're more strategic in when they choose to behave egotistically.
Right. Awesome. That's a great answer. Now let's talk about somebody who is, 90%, 99% of the jiu-jitsu community, right? Probably isn't a serious competitor and maybe competes locally a few times. What is the best way, in your opinion, to approach daily training? How should you think about daily training?
So most people who practice jiu-jitsu have fallen into this belief that let's say they're 4 months in the jiu-jitsu, 8 months in, that their job is to submit their training partner and then not get submitted by their training partner. These are the two things that are on their mind when they shake hands and they roll. And even when they're learning jiu-jitsu, most of what they want to learn is to avoid being placed in positions, to escape positions where they're in danger. And so getting out of bad places is the key, is that one of their focuses, as well as submitting people. These are the two things everybody wants. They want to escape bad positions and they want to learn more submissions. If you ask 100 people at a seminar, what should we learn? The chance of someone saying, how to better defend X submission or stay safe in this position and, neutralize their attacks, or hold better side mount. Those are the two, you never hear those. What you hear is, I want to escape. I want to get out of side control. I need more side control escapes. I need back escapes. And I need some more submissions from the bottom of the guard. And I would like, to work on my whatever submission. So I feel like that right there, when you start off your practice and when you've adopted that mindset, I feel like you're in trouble.
Okay.
You're already off on, I don't want to say the wrong foot.
You just described a lot of people.
I feel like you're moving in the direction of it's unsustainability. And I'm saying this because every single person, it doesn't matter if you're 23 right now, 21, young, 19-year-old, purple belt phenom, everybody, if you really, really love jiu-jitsu and you want to be around jiu-jitsu for many years, like 20, 30 years, lifetime, 45 years old, still around jiu-jitsu, 50 years old, which I believe most people do, then we have to consider how can we train today that will allow us to be around jiu-jitsu forever. It's the same thing that goes to your eating habits and your investments. Are you investing in real estate or in stocks? Or what kind of things do you have to do with your money to where you can have money 40, 50 years from now? And the same goes for having jiu-jitsu and having your ability to practice. So when it comes to everyday practice, here's what happens is that people they touch someone's hand and then they're running towards submissions and running from submissions. So they're not investing in the two things that I believe will allow them to not only catch more submissions and escape more bad positions. What I'm suggesting that you invest in will give you more submissions and more chance of escaping. You see, but what they're doing is they're just fighting for the submissions and the escapes. What I'm saying is that if you dedicate 50% of your training time, meaning every other role, you dedicate it to, all I want to do is stay in this inferior position and observe my partner attempting to submit me and better understand the things that people can do to me from this position, which means I'm not going to do what? Escape. When you do that, if you do that every other day, 1 year, 2 years down the road, your understanding of what's possible from the bottom, from where you are, will be so high that it will help in it rolls over. That information, that it rolls over and it will help in your ability to identify the best and safest opportunities to escape. You will escape more often because you're comfortable in that inferior position. But yet everybody wants to get out right away. And the same goes for submissions. I sometimes play a game where I watch 50 people sparring, 80 people sparring. And I sit down with somebody like a friend on the bench and I say, let's just watch. And anytime someone lands anywhere where they can go for a submission, bottom guard, top side mount, top mount, back control, let's just start counting how many seconds it takes before they start going for a submission. And nobody can wait over 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Within 5 seconds, they're going for a submission from the mount back everywhere. And then I look at this and it just tells me that everybody is attacking because everybody's uncomfortable and they lack confidence in their ability to control the position. And the reason why they go for the submission right away is because they don't want to lose the opportunity to seal the deal and to show themselves, their training partner, their instructor, their peers, that they are good, because they have decided that good means you submit people. It's the same reason why a police officer tries to handcuff the suspect within 3 seconds of taking them down. They're already pulling their handcuffs out, trying to handcuff the guy's still fighting. It's because you're afraid and you want to secure, you want safety, and they want safety for their egos. Because if you stay on the side control for too long, the person might escape your side mount. It's the contrary. It's the opposite.
And you'll look bad.
And you'll look bad. It's actually the opposite. The sooner you try to submit somebody, the more chance you give them to escape. And we already know that they're trying to escape the moment they get there, because everybody's always trying to go somewhere. When people do jiu-jitsu, no matter where they land, in any position, the person, every single person, when they land somewhere, the moment they land there, they're thinking where they have to go next.
It's funny that you say when you attack, you open up space for them to escape, right? But then I can know that, and I do know that, you know. But at the same time, when you were talking about how you know, you should just hold the position, and how long does it take for most people to go for something less than 5 seconds? I can have both thoughts in my head simultaneously. You know, I think I absolutely agree with Ryron that when I attack, I open the door for submission. But then if I don't attack, I might look bad and lose the position, and I'm impatient. I need to get this, you know, this arm triangle I'm working on, and it's just, yeah, it's almost like a conundrum. It's like I know it, but then, you know, and if I think as a black belt's been training 15 years, you probably have seen it in you know, thousands of people, and everybody that's probably been training less than like 5 years at some point has had this thought, you know. So everybody probably thinks exactly like what you just described.
I side mounted a black belt in England, I would say 1.5 years ago. and the guy tried to move out of my side mount and my knee on belly. And he was a little thinner, like 170, 15, 20 pounds lighter. And I was holding him down, and he's trying for like 40 seconds. And then eventually I just stopped, and I said, he came to my seminar, and I said, what's happening right now? What's happening? What are you doing? He said, I'm trying to escape. I said, why? He said, because I don't want you to submit me. And I said, do you know how I'm going to submit you? And he said, no. And I said, do you want to know how I'm going to submit you? Like, do you understand? Like, you have the opportunity right now to understand what's happening at Gracie University. Because I'm going to go for the top 2-3 things that I like. I don't have 19 attacks from the side mount, even though I know 19 or 47 attacks. I only use 7 things when I side mount somebody, especially in these last couple of years. So don't you want to know? Now, I'm not saying you have to let me catch you in it, but at least identify it and trust in your basic, elbow tight to your body, hands defending your neck, head to the ground, not turning your back. Trust in these basic ideas that you can at least sense and feel a little bit of what I'm trying to go for, so you can improve your understanding of the position, and you can have a better relationship with your back being on the ground. Because as it is right now, your relationship with your back on the ground is very weak. And you're a black belt, and it's very important that as a black belt, your relationship with everything, with controlling the side mount, with being inside someone's guard, right? You have to give time to all these positions. And when I asked him, don't you want to know? He just kind of like, stop trying to get out.
Yeah.
Even if you escape right now, let's say he goes crazy and he escapes after 50 seconds. He can see that as like, yeah, I escaped. No, what are you thinking? Like,
didn't learn anything though.
You do that every day with everybody. You have an opportunity right now to be stuck and to feel me and what I'm going to go for. Why don't you do that? Now, it's such forward thinking. People are thinking so short term. All they care about is that this 5-minute roll. He had 3 friends there from his school. It wasn't even his, different association, different affiliation. Nobody would have known. Matter of fact, I did choke him. It didn't change his life. He still competed the next month in a tournament, So it's just, people are so short-minded in that they care, like who's watching right now, who's going to talk about it in the locker room after. They're not thinking big picture. Big picture is, I want to know if Josh Barnett side mounts me. I just want to know what kind of things he might do to me. How does his side mount feel? How does his headlock feel? How bad is it?
Yeah, Ryron, you mentioned something I want to touch real quick. This does not have to do with ego, but you mentioned keeping the head on the ground. Now, I have my own theories on that, but what do you mean by keeping the head on the ground as a defense?
There's the overall, there are times where you want to be as close as you can to the person and hold the person and hug the person. And there are times where the ground can be your ally.
Right.
And you could use the floor to nail your elbows to the ground, or push off my right foot to nail my left shoulder to the ground so they can't get under my head and my neck. So as a defensive measure, nailing your head to the ground, pinning your neck to the ground, your elbows can be very, very annoying, very useful. And my grandfather did a lot of that when he was much older. I remember him being like 87 years old, 90, and he would lay down and he would defend against us. And half of his defense was connecting to us, staying very close and correct hand positioning. And the other half was almost being very heavy and pinning his elbow, nailing his body to the ground. And he would use the ground very well. And Pedro Sauer said that line. He said, the ground is our ally. And ever since then, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so right. I always knew that, but I never said the ground is our ally until he said it 5 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, when you brought that up, I was like, wow, that's something that I've actually been seeing. I see so many people trying to bridge, with their head way up in the air, and it's just impossible. You can't generate any force.
We could talk for 2 hours on how you can use the ground.
Right.
Like, I do full seminars. I do 2 hour, 3 hour straight, not teaching anything except for using the ground to your advantage. It's unbelievable. And
wow.
People, and they want more. If you look at it, it's kind of like a boring seminar, but at the same time, it's the seminar that allows you to then roll with the purple belt who's, 10 years younger and become the most annoying defensive person ever, because defense is the name of the game.
Might be the most useful seminar. Might need to bring you over for one of these seminars.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
You know what?
One thing, real quick. Sorry, Jim. One thing that I think listeners that haven't seen this need to watch. We talked about Ryron's match with Josh Barnett, but also Ryron, your match with Andre Galvao, also at Metamoris, where I thought that was a brilliant display of defense, and when you're talking about being stuck in a side mount or, the mount or whatever, I think the only position you never gave up in that match was the back, and you survived all those positions. And I thought you were coming on towards the end. So that's a good example of, what this man is talking about and putting into practice. So do you have what are your thoughts on that match? What can you just give me, what your general takeaway was?
Jim, what were you going to talk about the last topic, Jim?
Well, sorry, Jim. Go ahead before we get there.
I wanted to kind of full circle everything, because you were talking about at a seminar and the what was going on between you and that other black belt. And I thought that was a full circle moment, because you're talking about this guy. He's fighting the position, but he bought a ticket to the show, i.e. your seminar, but he's refusing to look at the screen. He's robbing himself of that opportunity. So there's an example that I wanted to really focus on. There's an example of when you do, quote unquote, put that ego in check. Look what it can open you up to. It can open you up to how often do you get to roll with a Ryron Gracie who's living this was in England. You're not even from that country. You're in country for a few days, and he's robbing himself of an opportunity to see what you would do with him. He's a co-star. So I wanted to point that out, because that's an example of what we're talking about here.
And he doesn't know it.
And he doesn't know it. He's too much noise going on. And if he was able to lay in the cut and allow that to happen, then he walks away from that seminar, with his other three buddies you spoke of, everyone sharing a story. Oh, he got me this way. He got me this way. He got me this way. So there's three avenues of knowledge right there. And then and then you brought up the Josh Barnett thing. And I think that was a perfect way to just bring this whole episode to a full circle here. And also the practicality of everything. So we've talked at length about the principles and the philosophical views of jiu-jitsu. Years back, and it could be in 6 or 7 years ago, you actually came up with what I thought was a very beneficial tool of exercising ego, whether you need to put it in check or you want to get after it. And it was the whole keep it playful movement. Keep it playful, keep it real. And then you had a coin. Explain to us what that was real quick.
Yes. And about the guys in England, to be very clear, they lost an opportunity, but don't get me wrong, him trying to get out for 30, 40, 50 seconds, that was also an experience. You see that? So there's also, you can still gain from there, but I understand what you're saying in that there was more of a lesson, especially for me. I can give him tools on how to defend himself, which was what the show was about. Now, in terms of keep it playful, it's a very tricky conversation because it got misconstrued and people very much attacked it in the sense of like, oh, it's weak and it's, gay. I heard that like from people like it's not tough. It's not badass. And I heard that from people that I even have known my whole life. And, even relatives. Like there was a saying in Portuguese, and it is brincadeira de homem fede a sangue. And that's that a man's game reeks of blood. So that was commonly thrown at me in social media, and that Gracies don't keep it playful. And what I meant by keep it playful was simply allow yourself to have a more lighthearted approach to your interactions on the mat. Because I saw one kid one day who was amazing at guard, probably, I don't know, 19 years old, 18, very amazing guard, very flexible. And he would never let anybody ever pass his guard. Look, like he had no spine. And I remember seeing this, but then when I would side mount him and he's 18, 19, he would drown. He had no idea what to do, but his guard, if you land in his guard and you're a brown belt and he's a purple belt, you're most likely going to lose. It's very bad for you because he's a tall kid and very flexible. But so then I started thinking, man, this poor kid, like he, in his mind, he's representing and he's being real. And because of that, he's always either in his amazing position, or 2% of the time when a few of our instructors and higher belts and myself and Henner side mount him, he dies. And I thought, man, how can I help this kid be the best that he can be? And then I remember my grandfather when I was younger. This was when I was like 29 already, right? Older. But when my grandfather was with me when I was younger, 18, 19, 15, 17, he would say, "He don't lay down on your back." And I didn't really like this, but he would force me to lay down and say, "You cannot escape. You can only defend. Like straighten your legs, for example, cross your feet, straighten your legs. I don't want you getting out of side mount or side control. Only survive." And then I realized that I was doing it because I had somebody standing over me saying, "Do this." And you don't want to not do it for grandpa because you're 18.
Grandpa, you're right.
Grandpa, especially that grandpa.
Exactly. Right.
So I'm like, all right. And then of course, you know, I would say at 16, 17, it was a little bit annoying. Those younger ages, 15, 16, 17. At 18, 19 years old, it got to the point where I was so good at defending and it was so clear. I've rolled with so many guys that are like, "Hidon, I cannot believe how good you're defending." And the reason why it's so good, a huge part of it is because of your disconnect with this idea that you have to escape. So you're not making meaningless movements. You're not just making these mistakes. So then I realized that I had somebody standing over me, but this student of ours does not have somebody standing over him. Neither do thousands of people around the world. You don't have somebody saying, "Hey, lay on your back right now. Spend 20 minutes with 5 different people, each doing 5 minutes, or 4-minute little rounds, you defending." You don't have somebody forcing you into that. So you will never get it unless it's forced on you. Or
the idea here on of somebody staying in that position and not escaping is like in most jiu-jitsu academies is like, what are you talking about? Like what do we escape right away? So I don't think I've ever done specific training like that. And I think I need to add that now. Now that you bring it up, I need to add that to my training too.
Listen, this is my grandfather is telling me this because this is the guy who's been doing jiu-jitsu forever. Do you understand? 70, 80 years. He's like, I need you to know. I need you to immerse yourself in the position. I don't want you to escape the side mount because you're afraid. I want you to escape the side mount because the opportunity is given to you. And it is the efficient and it's the right move at the right time. It's almost like you don't have the right to escape on pure explosion and power, and even with technique behind it, if you don't feel comfortable. You cannot move on. You cannot progress until you've reached a level of comfort where you are. So I started telling students, you guys, let's keep it playful. Let's not be too concerned with the outcome of this position or this role. Let's be more curious about what is possible from here. Let's allow ourselves to feel what's happening and spend more time in these positions that everyone tries to avoid, so that in the event that we land in one of these positions, we are more prepared and more comfortable. And oh my gosh, because think about it, people have been telling students to don't be flat on your back, turn on your side, hip out, shrimp, bump, escape, move. They've been saying these things for years and years and years and years, 10 years, 15 years. And then I show up and I say, listen, don't move, just lay there. Like, I've had people tell me, they say, Hidon, black belts tell me, I've been training Hidon for 25 years, jiu-jitsu. I'm 44 years old right now, and I'm a black belt. And I've never once in my life heard that I don't have to escape the side control, that I can stay here for 3 minutes. I've never heard that once in my life. And they're almost like emotional, because the thing is this, don't get me wrong, if you can get out like this, go and get out. But that black belt who I'm talking about right now, I'm thinking about the guy from New Jersey that I know. When I side mounted him, he couldn't get out. In multiple privates, like I said, training for 18, 20 years. It's a weight off his chest, right, to know that it's okay that he can't get out, because he can at least stay safe. Right. And if I become overly aggressive and try to submit him, then his opportunity to escape comes.
You're not telling people to not get out, but you're saying that you need to be comfortable with being in that position should you not have the ability to get out, or if you choose to stay there.
Well, that's the question is, can anybody teach a student, let's just say in 4 years, 5 years, to escape everyone's side control?
No.
No. If you can, sign me up. And even if you can, it's a short window. Let's say that for the ages of like, from you're 26 years old, start when you're 22. From 26 to 30, you escape everyone's side mount, or until, 33. And then at a certain point, now you have some 23-year-old kid, been training for 9 years since he was a little kid, got all the kids' belts.
Yeah.
And now he's 22 pounds heavier, he side mounts you. I don't care, he's been training for 9 years, he's a purple belt, and you've been training for 20. He can hold you down. He's 20 pounds heavier, and he's good. He's athletic. But your story is that you have to escape the position that is bad, that you can't be here, you have to move. And that story will get you killed in the jiu-jitsu sense, submitted. And in a fight sense, it can get you killed. Somebody can be holding me down in a street fight and I cannot escape. That's okay. I don't mind. Now, when they attempt to do damage and to punch me and knee me in the ribs or punch me in the groin, they have to release some control of me, and then I will escape. So the principle translates even to a street fight.
Right. And I think defense also, it seems like defense is the principles are more, they last, right? Whereas offense, there's new things that come out berimbolo. You may not understand the newest jiu-jitsu metagame, but if your defense is solid, you at least won't be submitted, and I think that's super important to understand for people who focus mainly on, all the coolest new things, but they don't have defense. I've rolled with so many high-level guys where, they might beat me up offensively, but if I get past their guard in any sense, they are done, and that's 100%. And that's kind of weird, to see such a high-level guy not have defense. And it's very common. I've rolled many people who have that problem.
So Hidon, I want to jump in, and I can picture Victoria right now off the side giving you the laser eyes, like we gotta go, because I know you have.
It's my class.
Oh, it's your class. Okay.
Not hers.
Okay, but if you did have to go, I did want to just kind of go ahead and wrap this up and get you on with your day.
We got 15 more minutes.
We have 15
10 more minutes. Yeah.
15. All right. Let's
keep going.
One small thing.
Go ahead.
Based right there on what you just said about you're talking about people needing defense and how it's defense is what is sustainable. This is what I talk about if you want to be around jiu-jitsu your whole life, you have to have something to fall back on, and that is the comfort in all positions. So let's work on comfort. And I really, really believe that it doesn't matter whoever the best competitors are today in the world and whoever they were 15 years ago, how involved they are in jiu-jitsu, I believe is directly correlated to how much time they spent analyzing the small positions and the small defensive measures, because it's very easy to be a black belt. And once you hit, 45, 47, kind of not want to spar anymore, not want to put yourself out there because you're past your prime, but you can very much keep playing. Now, the question is this: even at 47, you could probably keep competing and beating up your students. But then at 52, there's going to be a time, 61, 64. When is the age that you can't just run through people? Like someone like Andre Galvon, one of the best of all times in terms of slice through people just like a knife. And right now, I don't know how old he is. He's probably 38 years old. Or 39.
Probably close to 40s, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
So great. For the next 10 years, 8 years, obviously he has students that are also very decorated and very tough guys, but the average student that's a purple belt, brown belt, he can play with them for the next 10, 15 years. But then at 57 years old, now the truth is at 57, you can just become defensive then. And I'm talking about he's like a professional athlete. So
right.
Forget him. What about the student who's just 38 years old, 42,
right.
loves jiu-jitsu, is a doctor, ends up becoming an attorney, has a family, trains 4 days a week. As he gets older, his kids are now training. They're like 11 and 12, 13, and he wants to be around it with them, but he can't because the way that he approached jiu-jitsu, it burned him out. So that's why one of the most important things to help keep us on the mat is teaching jiu-jitsu. If you really want to be around jiu-jitsu forever, and it's funny, is that Pedro Valente in Miami just said that my grandfather, he was talking to Damian Maya about this on a podcast on Damian Maya's Instagram page. And he said that my grandfather suggested to him that when he moves to Miami to continue teaching, he moved a lot of jiu-jitsu in Brazil, he moved to Miami, teach people, and that's how you'll stay sharp. Not only is it how you'll stay sharp, but it's how you'll stay involved, because teaching people, the intrinsic value from teaching people is greater than the short-lived reward of submitting somebody who's on a Tuesday. So
I think teaching is huge. And I think you brought up the two things I felt you brought up that were the most important for longevity in jiu-jitsu was the comfort in a bad position, understanding defense, being comfortable. And that's ego, that's ego. If you let the ego, consume you, and you can't, you get the bottom and be defending, well, one day that's going to catch up to you and you're not going to be able to, throw everybody off you or keep them away with your guard. And then you're going to quit because you're not going to be able to handle that. And that I think is super important for people that want to train jiu-jitsu forever. And I want to train jiu-jitsu forever. So the other thing you brought up, what was the last thing you said here on teaching? Yes, the teaching, super important too, because it just, I'm sure everybody has noticed that whenever somebody teaches, their level goes up, their understanding goes up, and they become more involved with the sport. And yeah, I agree. I think teaching is great. I think
and everybody teaches differently. You can teach, you can mentor. You don't have to necessarily open a school and teach private classes and group classes. You could just be a little more experienced in some way, and you can help someone who has less experience. You help bring them up. You help them side mount you. You let them get good positions on you. You share what you know with them. Now, obviously, to teach, you have to feel safe enough as a blue belt with 2-3 stripes to teach in front of an instructor who's a black belt potentially. And you have to feel safe that if you teach something a little bit wrong, you're not going to be, attacked for that or kind of exposed and singled out. So
how do you handle that here at your academy?
Well, first of all, every single student, we encourage everybody all the time. We just say it. Help each other, give each other feedback, go slowly, ask each other questions, right? These are things that it's said so much that now they're like, okay, help each other, go slowly, give each other, they become hypnotized to those things. And when they help each other, it's my job to say, hey, Thank you for helping him. I can see that you're giving him some good skills. Very nice passing that information on. And small little nuggets, you know, like people telling people to wait, hold on, wait for 10 seconds, wait a little bit. So praise the behavior that you want.
So you encourage the maybe the higher belts or the people who have more experience in the class to mentor and teach the students who are in the class?
Yeah, we encourage them to we don't make it so official, but when you train with somebody who has less experience, help them out. Don't tap somebody out 7 times who's a blue belt when you're a brown belt.
Right.
It's unnecessary, because remember, they're disqualifying themselves every day. They could have drove an hour. They maybe didn't even want to come to class. You know what I mean? They had to lose their home. They can't pay for their rent anymore. They got to move out of their home to a smaller place. Life is happening. And you tap somebody out 7 times, that can have do a number on them. So let's protect them. And we protect them by, I'm not saying you shouldn't beat them once, but then give them a little tip. Say, hey, just so you know, this is why I caught this. So it's very much caring for each other. And that's
there's a you know, that's a very open-minded attitude that you have in your academy then, because I think I wouldn't say the majority, but a good handful of schools that I've been to discourage that kind of behavior and say, you know, if you're not the instructor or a coach, you don't teach, don't ever teach. And, you know, we don't want to catch you teaching. Oh, remember, and I think that's not great.
Real. Yeah, that's real.
Remember, it's because if everyone's teaching, what is the coach valued for?
Right.
It's threatening.
Right. It's threatening the authority.
It's because they identify with being the person that gives the knowledge. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's the same thing with a woman who identifies with being the one who gives pleasure to the husband. Do you understand? Let's say the husband finds pleasure another way that is still not, what's the word? Cheating.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's uncomfortable. You see, it's like, I'm the giver of pleasure. I'm the giver of knowledge. Yeah. I'm the one that gives the jiu-jitsu technique. No. And that's why there are some people today, MMA fighters, and who train everywhere. They have their main cornerman and so on, but they get information from everywhere. And the main cornerman, like Brian Ortega, for example. Brian Ortega trains jiu-jitsu with Henner, a little bit with myself, and just being around the academy. And he's getting information from everywhere. But at the same time, in the end, he still has one person that he kind of is this final go-to for jiu-jitsu, and that is Henner, and that's great. But the ability to get information from multiple people should not be threatening to the one person.
It's very common. It's very common. And I've dealt with in MMA quite a bit. You know, you can't have the head coach is the nutritionist, the strength coach, and teaches jiu-jitsu, and they're technically only supposed to be teaching striking. And it's very common. I think the most successful fighters that I've worked with have what you described, that open-minded attitude with one, you know, set team, but the team is not offended, or the identity of the coach isn't tied into, you know, working with the athlete. They want the best for the athlete, and the athlete can get the information however they want.
Nobody wants to feel like they are not special. And imagine if someone stops learning from me. They say, hey, I don't want to learn from you anymore. I want to learn from him. See, what that means is that I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's why if I break up with my wife tomorrow, I say, Victoria, I don't want to be with you anymore. I want to be with her. I'm essentially telling her that she's not good enough in her mind, but it's not true. It's not true. I'm not telling her that. I'm just saying, this is what I need and want. It's not that you're not good enough. And if my student says, I want to go learn over here now. They're not saying that I'm not good enough. What they're saying is that what they're looking for is over there. But that doesn't mean that I'm not good or I'm not special. Because there are still others here who want to learn from me. And if there is no others will arrive soon. So.
Right. I know here on that you said, you know, the ego, and I agree with you that ego is a double-edged sword, and it just is. It's not, you know, good or bad. But, you know, I think there are certain things that, like, for example, if the ego keeps you from doing what is going to give you growth, do you think that what is something that maybe somebody that's listening here can tell themselves, maybe like a mantra or some advice that you can give them, that if somebody doesn't want to do something because they don't want to look bad, and even though they've heard this podcast, they might not, is there something that you could tell them that's worked for you that's going to help them dissolve that ego, if it's going to be used,
Put it this way. You can manipulate your ego in any direction you want. Think of anything that your ego doesn't want to do. Think of it. It's like my ego doesn't want me to go
sign up for Worlds.
Sign up for the Worlds, a jiu-jitsu tournament. And it doesn't want me to because I don't feel prepared and I could lose.
Yes.
Right? Now, you could just flip it and say, I'm so afraid that I can lose and I'm not prepared that I'm going to do it anyways. You see that? That's my ego.
Yeah, it's almost like you're sticking it to your ego. Like, you know what? I'm gonna do it because I'm scared. That's the right move.
I'm using my ego to do what I want to do. Like, I don't eat cupcakes and I don't eat cake and drink soda and stuff. But that's my ego likes to say that I don't eat trash food. My ego. And then somebody who's it's unlimited. Anything you can think of, use it. You can flip it on its head, and you could have your ego. Your ego is serving me. It's serving me all the time.
Yeah, that's great, man. I think that's a great answer.
Yeah,
just use it.
We have to get, like, for example, we can get together on the mat. Let's just say, next month. Where do you live?
Arcadia.
Yeah. Got it. So we can get together on the mat. Let's just say when my shoulder gets better in 2-3 weeks, hopefully sooner. But when I feel good, we'll get together on the mat and let's just do it. Let's just do it. But you're going to have hesitation because you're going to feel like you're being corrected on many basic things that you feel like you should know better. But at the same time, your ego can say, I'm excited to be corrected on a half a dozen very basic things. And I'm excited for that because once I'm corrected in them, I will grow.
Yeah, grow. That's the word right there.
And I'll be better. So we'll video that. We should video that and add it to this podcast as a follow-up.
Anytime. Love it. Love it.
All right. So Ryron, we'd like to, both of us would like to thank you for taking the time out to speak on the subject. And we will indeed take you up on that offer. We'll hit you up.
It makes perfect sense because it's the ego continued on the mat discussion. And then people can see it and say, oh, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful. That'd be a beautiful thing. Hopefully everything works out well with your shoulder. You're going to get that looked at today. And Ben, any last words?
No, thanks to Bet DSI, thanks to, just our usual sponsors, so thank you. Thanks, Ryron. Thanks for doing this. This is a great talk. I think this is going to help a lot of people. I'm going to make sure all my students listen. And, anything, Jim?
No, I would just like to defer to Ryron. Ryron, any last words? Man of the hour.
No, we're good. We'll see you guys in the mat in a month or so, and we'll make something happen. And then maybe we can, just invite people to watch or
sky's the limit.
We'll film
questions. Do something crazy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Ryron. Thanks a lot, brother. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
All right.